they've turned around to me and said, you need to stop, you need to breathe. And I'm like frantically like, I can't, I have to find Patty, I have to find my dog. My best mate had just arrived. Yeah, just getting out on the road, hey? And we didn't know what was in store for us that day. Now we're at the bus station to see if we can get a ticket that allows my dog and myself to go 72 hours. We're screwed, man. I reckon we're hitchhiking. This is Brazil. Let's get it. What do you reckon, buddy? Brazil. Alrighty then. Come up. There we go. So I did always want to do this video with my mate, but of course now it's just the two of us. The things that happened off camera, I want to share my thoughts and feelings about what I was going through in each moment as well. And it's also a way for me to kind of share it and get it out of my system to include you guys in on the ups and downs of this journey. So if you're just coming across our adventure for the first time, my name's Ryan, this is Patty, and for the last year and a half we've been traveling in a tuk-tuk, trying to become the first to drive a three-wheel vehicle from the bottom of Argentina to the top of Alaska. Unfortunately, just recently we were rear-ended by a truck in Brazil while leaving Rio de Janeiro, and now we're kind of stranded, where we've got all of our belongings that we need to live on the road, but we don't have the ability to live on the road. So it was literally day one. My best mate on the planet has just arrived from Australia. He's first time in Latin America, and he's come all the way to just kind of get a feel for this adventure, travel with us for a little while. We had a productive morning, we had a big breakfast, we got to the gym even just before, getting all of our stuff in the tuk-tuk, packing it all up. It was our first time properly like packing it, seeing how everything maneuvered in the back. It's a bit of a Tetris game, even for myself alone, but now with all of my mate's stuff. We made it work. Patty was sitting comfy. It was a bit of a cold morning. I remember it being overcast, had the blanket over Patty in the back, but she was just happy to kind of be out on the road again. And then we're sending on out. Big vibes. I remember filming Copacabana, the beach, and saying how this would be our last time on the East Coast since we were really tracking inland, and we'd be on to the West Coast on our way to Peru. So it was exciting. It was a lot of firsts for the day. I'd never really traveled with my best mate like that ever before as well. So we know that our connection is fantastic, and that like off camera, like 3-4 hour phone calls are being had with that man every week. He's kind of the reason we've really gotten this far potentially on the journey, so issue free, since it's quite a lonely journey as well. So he's kind of the man I depend on when I'm kind of just in a rut, or maybe where things aren't straight in my head. Just call him up and talk through things. So it was really kind of such an anticipated day. We're kind of talking that morning about how we'd travel on the highway to leave Rio de Janeiro. As soon as we get to the town of Japari, that's where the mountains kind of start. So we were maybe spending about 2 hours in the tuk-tuk on the highway, hour and a half, if that. So that's just a safer way for us to kind of leave the city. If we take back roads as soon as we start leaving Rio, it's just a slightly more dangerous route, and us being foreigners, obviously not knowing the area and stuff, Google Maps can really just calculate a route through the favelas quite quickly. You can get yourself in trouble without realizing. So it was our plan to just get out of the city using the highway, get it done, and then head into the mountains. And then that night we were really trying to plan on getting a wild camp set up. We had whiskey in the back. We had like the idea that we'd go to the shops, buy everything to kind of cook up a bit of a feed that night, maybe even make a bit of a fire depending on the location and if that felt like the right thing to do. But him and I are very much on the same page. It's just a very much go with the flow type attitude. Patty and Arjuna as well had created a nice connection in the days prior, so there was a lot of trust between them, and we were just about to be on the freaking road and having an exquisite time, I guess. So yeah, there's a bit of footage that didn't make that crash video. It just didn't feel right. I kept that intro sequence really short. It was kind of us just showing how happy we were, and then it cut into the crash. But obviously we made a few stops, we got fuel, bit of food, let Patty out for a little walk, and things were progressing well. It was just a smooth, cruisy day. And this is where the incident happens. So I don't remember what we were talking about. I don't remember what music we were listening to. All I remember is we were having a laugh about something that happened back in Rio. And I remember looking at him and then looking past him and to check the left side mirror. And at that point, I've registered this huge yellow truck, and I've never seen, I can remember it so vividly, I've never seen a vehicle that close in our mirror before. And before I could even register it, let alone make a maneuver, we've just been thrown off the road with this huge blow in the back. We've been sent off, hurling towards this right metal barricade. But with what we were acknowledging and also what was happening within the accident, it was all very quick and very unclear. So it almost took both of us to try to discuss our side of the stories afterwards to then come to a conclusion about what was going on. But it was really not so clear whether we were flipped on our side from the initial blow straight away, or if the marks were from the chassis moving side to side from the instability, before then us making the impact with the metallic barrier, where we then lost the front windscreen, and we then was sent off again back towards the highway. And at that point we were definitely flipped over and kind of spiraling before coming to an abrupt stop. And while Arjuna was on my left side in the front before the crash, keep in mind, yeah, we've got no doors, we don't have seat belts, Patty's in her harness at the back. When I've kind of come to my senses and stood up, I've been on the left side, so Arjuna's now on my right side. We've completely switched places mid-crash. And I remember I was more able, I was more okay, and I was instantly up and looking to my right, checking that my best mate was okay, and he's giving me the all good as he's trying to like get to his feet. And I was already, before looking behind me, I was already saying to Arjuna, but what about Patty? Where's Patty? And that's what I was saying as I turned around and I realized that she isn't in the back of our vehicle. And I remember probably the most scared I've been in my entire life was right there in that moment. In a split second, had like 20 different sights cross my mind about what I thought had just happened to Patty. Of the more I look around, the more I'm going to see the absolute worst case scenario in this scene. And I don't need to put it into words because it would have been crossing your minds as well, I believe. But the next best thing for her not to be in the back was what I saw, and it was her running off, just sprinting off. In the distance, she was running down the highway still in the same way we were going. And I've seen cars kind of, they're stopping but they're more dispersed, they're slowing down, they've seen what's happened to us in the split second. And I also remember that we've stood up and I've turned around and I've seen an ambulance with already its lights on. In Brazil they already drive with their lights on already, but what I saw the ambulance before I saw Patty. And at that point I was already looking for Patty, but I thought that I was in a coma, if that makes sense. I thought that I had blacked out for maybe a few seconds or a few minutes, long enough for an emergency vehicle to get to our situation, because I've stood up, and that's the first thing I saw out of my peripherals as I was checking for Patty, was this ambulance. And it made no sense until I'd seen Patty. And if she's still in my eyesight, then I didn't black out. It was that the fact that there was already an ambulance, potentially witnesses to the crash. And all I said to Arjuna was, I'm going to get Patty. I understood he was shaken up enough where he couldn't go anywhere, and I didn't need him to go anywhere as well. I just needed to go get my little girl back, and that's what I did. So yeah, it was freaking scary, Bubba. Chasing after you. You know I'm talking about you. You little intelligent papa. So I would have vaulted out of the tuk-tuk. This should have been something I would have remembered, I think, with it being like a bit of a maneuver. But honestly, the first maybe 30 seconds even running down the highway after Patty, it all seemed like a blur. It's really hard to visualize. When I was running, all I had with me was my wallets. My phone had come out of the pocket at that point. Not that I wanted to film anything, that was just, there's one priority, and that was getting her back. But that's why with the crash, the footage begins when I get back. But I do remember at least 2 or 3 cars on my left with me running down the shoulder. The one that sticks out the clearest is like a dark gray ute that's gone past me, and Patty would have rounded a corner of this highway, so she's kind of gone out of sight for the moment. And as I've gotten closer, there's either the highway route or like a driveway route that kind of went up into this. There's a few farms and houses and things, so I've seen the ute drive off the driveway and then kind of go up this hill, and I've chased the car after it, thinking, hey, they've got sight of Patty. I at this point didn't. So I got to the top of the driveway, and I'm saying, have you seen my dog? Have you seen my dog? In like Spanish, English. They've stopped and said, I think we saw her go up here. And then they said, we'll ask someone. And they've had a farmer come out of his barn at that point, and they were saying, have you seen a dog? Have you seen a dog? And at that point, I fully recognized these people just drove off the driveway, but I don't think they know where Patty is. And they've turned around to me and said, you need to stop, you need to breathe, you need to just take a rest. And I'm like frantically like, I can't. I have to find Patty, I have to find my dog. And she could have gone and like went into this small farming community. I had this feeling in my chest that no, I think she might have kept going on the highway. And that gut feeling just told me to run down the hill. So I didn't go backwards down that driveway. I just kind of rolled myself down this steep like cliff to get back on the side of the highway. And then I ran for another 2 minutes more, and that's when the line of sight kind of got a lot larger then, and I could see her. I just kept running. And maybe 1 or 2 cars that kind of held like a wall, so that other cars that were coming up didn't just drive past them. The 2 cars were going the same speed as Patty, so that they could kind of keep her safe. But Patty was going left and right between these 3 lanes of the highway. And at that point, there was a truck that stopped and let me in. They kind of understood the situation. They just said, hey, get in. And it was this lady, and the 2 of us followed Patty, and I'm out the window and I'm like yelling Patty's name as we've gotten closer. And there was a point where she recognized it but didn't really, and then she kept running, and that's when she was in the far left lane at that point now. And keep in mind, there's maybe like just 2 metal barricades and maybe a 4 meter patch of grass between the other highway going the other way at full speed. So I'm freaking out when I'm seeing her in the far left lane, and she's frantically just still running and running and running. We're maybe at this point 3 kilometers down the road, maybe even 4 kilometers at that point. And she's then turned around and at the same time hit the metal barricade. She's run into one of the legs head on. At that point I had the opportunity to just jump out of the truck. You're okay, you're a bit sick at the moment. Yeah, that's why we're resting. She's lost her sense of direction and she's kind of reeling a little bit. I've jumped out and I've just kind of half jogged towards her, calling her name. At that point she stopped and kind of like started to hobble towards me. There's 2-3 cars stopped around us at this point as well. We're in the middle of the highway, and I've just had her come in my arms and I've held her by her collar. At that point, like I said, I've got my wallets in my pockets, so I've got no leash with me. I've got her harness, everything's just been left back at the tuk-tuk. So I had the reuniting back with Patty again, and she's just shaking and scared and in pain and dizzy as well she would have been. And at that point I've gone back to the truck, we were just right there, and I said, can you take me back to the accident? And she kind of said something and I confirmed, and she said something else, and then I understood, okay, she has to keep going. So that's fine. She helped a lot. I closed the door of the truck cabin and then started walking back to the accident, and we're then walking on the shoulder of the highway. We haven't crossed to the other highway, so the highway side that we're on, all the traffic's going in the same flow that we were driving before. And I've got her on my left side, I've got her collar in my hand, and we walked probably the first 10 minutes. No problems. This was when adrenaline's still there and still firing for the two of us. I've got like, yeah, her in my hand, and I'm trying to flag down cars and things, but they would obviously be unaware that I need help getting back. They're just kind of seeing this dude and a dog, and I've got sweat, and my jumper at that point, I still have my jumper on. It's all scraped up since my shoulder caught the blow of like a bit of the road rash. And then at that point, Patty just couldn't walk anymore. So I've had her kind of in my arms. We'd walk like a couple minutes in my arms, a couple minutes by my side. I couldn't carry her the whole time. I'm like really then at this point feeling this level of exhaustion. And she's kind of hobbling with her 2 right feet with the bloody ones that were cut up. I really wish I had her harness. It would have made it so much easier for me to pick up a lot more of her weight, just with the handle. But I'm kind of holding her by the collar, and I'm kind of bent down, and every hill, I didn't know how far I ran, and then I didn't even realize how far we drove at that point. So Patty ran a fair way. Just every round of a hill, I'm like, oh, we got one more hill. We got one more hill. We got back to the scene of the crash after what felt like forever. I am just so tired. Patty as well. I've got all this blood over my gray jacket since both her feet were bleeding, and each time I've had her in my arms. Unfortunately, we've got no footage of the incident. We're not even able to access the video camera that is put up on the highway. The police on the way back from the hospital with a junior, I'm kind of going off course here, but they mentioned that we would need to have the case between the truck driver and I go to court, and then the judge would need to request that video be used as evidence to support the case. So there is almost 99% chance we're never going to see the incident or the crash, but I don't know if I want to see it. You know, I understand that it would help to tell a lot of the story, especially since there were witnesses after the crash saying, like the one lady that was caught on camera where she was explaining that the truck driver was swerving left and right, and she was honking her horn, and she was furious because a week before a similar situation happened with a truck, and that was when she then pointed to our vehicle and she said, and look what this truck driver has done. So that was quite heavy to watch back and understand it all. And Arjuna didn't understand what was happening. He was just there filming it. But that was a crucial moment, because that again shows a lot about what happened. Because for me, during the crash, even speaking to that truck driver, it was a mystery of whether he was asleep or whether he was distracted or on his phone. The main doctor on the scene of the crash, he's just started saying like, your friend isn't okay, and that's when I was really freaking out. And they were like, we've got to get him to the hospital. He's really shaking, just he's got these tremors, and I was very, very worried for the situation. I was like, okay, he's on the way to the hospital. The doctors were then at that point saying he should be fine. And one of the first initial thoughts was like, I need to get back to Australia. This subconscious need for family and to be close to people that you love after a situation like that. I just felt I need security, I need safety, I need something comfortable. And the idea, obviously, of needing family come about, but then it quickly dissipated because I understand the impossibilities of that, especially for us. I understand that Australia has one of the strictest policies in bringing dogs into the country, with it potentially being a 6-month process and very expensive, something I'm not willing to pay for, and it makes no sense to. So I understood that even before adopting Paddy, I already had the idea of living abroad for several years, and now that we're together, that's just how it's going to be. We'll potentially, most likely, living together in the Americas throughout these 2 continents, but then also elsewhere. But the idea of Australia is just not on my plate. Arjuna was saying that his hiking backpack that was propped up and held in by a carabiner against the left door there, that would have been what Paddy would have hit first as we flipped over. It's like, I have him to thank for, I think, how good we are in this situation. If I was in the front seat alone, I maybe wouldn't have made impact firstly with Arjuna as we flipped over. I probably would have just went straight to ground and would have just been sliding. We obviously flipped in, as I said, in the front, but my brother really freaking, I believe, saved my life and our lives. So it's like, if you trust the process, if you're living life and you're grateful for things, I don't know, if you're helping people out in the day-to-day, it's like, I guess there's a plan, there's a trajectory, and I don't know, I couldn't be mad at that truck driver. Even with my poor Portuguese, I understood a lot more watching the clip back of him. I wasn't even so sure during our conversation if he did apologize during or if he didn't. But after watching it back, it was clear that he didn't, and he wasn't sincere with even his remorse for the situation, where he did check to see if we were okay, but then he was mainly talking the situation down, saying, oh, your friend just went to hospital because he was scared. He was just scared then. So that, I understood that when I was editing, but not in the conversation. So I think if I did understand that better, it would have gotten heated. I did ask the police officer before, reminding him, hey, I'm not mad, but I do want closure, and I do kind of want to talk to the truck driver. He said, okay, but are you sure? Because usually it's quite emotional after an accident. I said, no, like, listen, I'm good. It's what I want. I maybe didn't get what I wanted, but it's better than nothing, I think. So yeah, I don't know how he is. I haven't spoken to the truck driver since the accident. I've just kind of been going through the insurance company, and the insurance company is in direct correlation with his company. But yeah, he he seemed fine. Like, he drove home from the incident. The police report that we finally got back, it showed signs and clear evidence that he had to stop and make a rest stop before, obviously, we had the accident, but he failed to stop at the rest stop. So I'm only realizing now how much it's impacted us. I'm really not good at not doing anything, and some days they consist of rest, and I'm maintaining a routine, and obviously Patty and I are getting out and doing walks around São Paulo here, but I really love the split between traveling and then editing. And I would spend a few days in like an apartment like this that we're in an Airbnb editing, but then when I get that itch, or when I'm satisfied with how much editing we've done, I'm usually always thinking about my visa as well. I've got that extended here in Brazil now, so that's not a worry, but the visa is usually an issue as well, so we're kind of always doing something. And I've spent maybe the last year and a half living like that, where I've never been completely comfortable because I've got a visa on my mind, but also we're traveling, and traveling is also for us content creating, and then all of those videos that we record, they need to be edited at some point, and that's what we do. So there's a beautiful balance that we get to live, and right now we just don't get to live that. We're in big cities, which is where we've been for quite a while now, and it's obviously not our favorite place to be. It's also very expensive as well. At the very start of the series, you might have seen me get a used tuk-tuk. That was Tory 1. So if I got a new tuk-tuk in Peru, it would be Tory 3. And the plan's not to get to Alaska on my 7th tuk-tuk. It's really wild how it's happening like it is, but nothing's so easy on the 3-wheel dream. But we're getting through it, I guess, ladies and gentlemen. I just think that it's really important. If you're near your family or friends right now, like, thank them, because in the moment where I was potentially this close to dying, I realized maybe what like the importances that are in your life and what really matter. And obviously family came to me. I was with my 2 best friends, Patty and Arjuna, at the time of the accident, so I had them close. That evening of the crash, Arjuna and I got back to the hotel, and after I'd finished talking to my family, that was quite hard, but we put on a movie, put on Guardians of the Galaxy #2, and we just sat back, and I was just saying, I just looked at him, I said, mate, like, as crazy as it was of a day, how good's life, right? At that point, he was still very shaken up, and he just looked at me and was like, dude, you're insane. But in the back of my mind as well, I was already thinking of, all right, what's the next plans? What are we going to change the name of the new tuk-tuk? Are we going to keep it yellow? These things will cross my mind like the evening of, with me being as okay as I was. It's and for me being who I am, it's impossible for me not to think about the future. Here we go. Righto then. So we're unfortunately able to find somebody to take us to Peru. It's a very unusual route to take regarding overlanders. They all go south or north from here. We were going north, and then with the accident that happened, we got to buy a new tuk-tuk. So we're gonna go to Peru to get a new one and then modify it. And the plan is that we're at the bus station. We're walking to the bus station currently to see if we can get a ticket that allows my dog and myself to go 72 hours together. So we'll see how we go. But if we don't, it's like the next steps is freaking hitchhiking. So here's where all the buses now take off from, and we've got the billing office somewhere around here where we're gonna find out whether we can get on the bus or not. But yeah, it's a pretty big bus station, a lot of little shops and things. And there we go. My heart's racing, man. Gee. Just gotta find the right one now. So that's a sign saying Foz do Iguaçu. That's some waterfalls that are like 13 hours west of where we are. So that would be a start. I'm not gonna try to go to Peru in one go. If we can get to either the waterfalls there or even Bolivia, that'll be like 30 hours on track. So
That's what we're gonna try to find first, to Bolivia. There's one bus company, I've just asked somebody here, they've said no, we don't do it. Next one down does. So there's one bus company that does to Santa Cruz. And it's the same bus company that I took to go from Buenos Aires to Santa Cruz when I first bought my original tuk-tuk. It's all full circle, you know? Oi, tudo bem? Eu tenho... Falas espanhol, não? Ah, perfeito. Eu tenho cachorro, perito, y estuvimos en un gran accidente en Río de Janeiro y necesitamos volver a Bolivia para comprar un nuevo. ¿Es posible? ¿Puedo pagar para un asiento, 2 asientos para mí y mi perita para viajar?
¿Cuándo usted quiere viajar?
Cuando puedo, tal vez mañana o viernes.
Mañana hay salida y viernes también. Hoy no hay salida de bus.
Perfecto, perfecto.
Ahora, ¿el perrito es raza pequeña?
Perita es Doberman, es raza media. Yo tengo una foto aquí y mi torito ala.
Grande, sí. El problema es que nosotros no podemos llevar cachorros grandes.
No.
Solo raza pequeña.
Raza pequeña.
Sí.
Sí, ella es muy tierna y hay una posibilidad, puedo pagar más también.
No, yo sé, entiendo, pero el problema es que la empresa prohíbe llevar cachorros raza grande, solo raza pequeña.
Raza pequeña.
Exacto. Ahora, usted puede hacer la consulta. Hay una empresa que se llama
Antariña. Yeah, small breeds only, he was saying, so now we're on to the next one. So there we go. Hola, ¿cómo estás? ¿Falas español?
¿Cuántos kilos tiene su perrito?
26, hay una foto aquí. Así.
6 kilos.
26 no.
Solo es de 8 kilos, hasta perritos de 8 kilos.
Solo de 8 kilos. Es que es mi única opción con vosotros. Y no hay ninguna manera que puedes ayudarme.
¿Alguna otra opción que usted conozca?
No. Okay. Obrigado. No. We're screwed, man. I reckon we're hitchhiking. What the heck? So we'll try to go to this waterfall that's like 13 hours on the way to avoid. Now we're like, how can we hitchhike the least to get to Peru? This is insane. This is just crazy. Hey Lana, okay, obrigado. Yeah, they've all same story, all got the same policy. Let me get my mind together and then I'll talk you through what's going to have to happen. So then we've had the metro ride to think about it. Now we're kind of just walking home. Yeah, it's a bit messy. It's very messy, ladies and gentlemen. Like, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. The fact that we've got to go 5,000 kilometers to Peru. 3 countries, Paraguay, Bolivia, Peru, or also like into Argentina, Chile, and then Peru is an option. Both of them have their own issues, where Bolivia is almost in a state of lockdown. All of the highways are kind of closed due to protests. And in Chile at the moment, with the visa issue with me, that I'd have to get my documents sorted. That could take like 3 weeks or so. But the main issue would be also getting the documents for Patty as well. So that would take about a month for her to get organized, since they're a very strict country. We literally went to the vet yesterday, got all of her health documents and stuff sorted, so she's cleared for like Paraguay, Bolivia, then to Peru, that route. Yeah, so 5,000 kilometers hitchhiking and then crossing that many borders. It's like doing that all with a dog. Seems insane. So the issue is there's no tuk-tuks in Brazil, so that's why they've got so many, like a plethora of freaking tuk-tuks in Peru. I've chatted to the best mechanics in Bolivia. They've got plenty of tuk-tuks there as well, but even those mechanics, they don't feel like they have the expertise to get what I want done, which is the main thing would be the engine swap. That's the hardest thing. But then there's like several other modifications that are huge that are already a common thing that get done in Peru. We can't take a bus. I've only heard horror stories with planes, and plus Patty's already a nervous dog. She's not cage trained. If they told me no, you have to put her underneath. So I just put out an Instagram post saying like, hey, is anybody driving at least maybe even an hour outside the city? That'll get us down the road. I'm really just thinking about how we can go a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further. Now with this hitchhiking plan in place. But yeah, next episode's going to be insane, ladies and gentlemen. So it's an entertaining channel. It's never easy. It's maybe simply why you guys are following. There's now, I woke up this morning, there's now 50,000 of you legends on board, which is just insane. So thank you so much for your support. The next couple episodes are going to be freaking crazy. What are they? Sim. Okay. Comer algo. Ok, vamos. Não, tá bom. Eu não falo muito português, perdão, senhor. Sim, vamos. Ele, como pedir coisa. Sim. Sim. Quer comida? Something substantial, my friend. They usually have like something in here, but there's nothing in there. Just get a sweet, whatever you want, man. Whatever you want. Yeah. Vamos. Tudo com crédito?
Crédito, né?
Sim. Não, tá bom mesmo.
Ela me deu uma coisa.
Obrigado. Ciao. Right. Good deed done for the day. You're gonna help out people because we're asking for a lot of help lately, and we're receiving it. So off to Peru, ladies and gentlemen. Catch you later. Beautiful Sao Paulo.